Jenna, welcome to the podcast. Listeners, I'm so excited to welcome Jenna from Roses for Everybody. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, give us quickly a brief overview of the campaign, how
hmm
you got involved. Our listeners might not have heard of it before, so give us a little intro.
Thank you. So, yeah, I am one of the members of Roses for Everybody, which is a campaign to, as funny as it sounds, demand the Bachelor franchise start casting fat people in their show. It's been on for over 20 years, and in those 20 years, they have had over 1,142 individuals on the show. And there's only been two self-identified plus-size individuals who went home night one without less than a minute of airtime each. That is a huge exclusion, and it is problematic. And we are aiming to get representation in this specific sphere in order to help with just like positive media representation of fat people. It's still lacking in pretty much all forms of media, especially reality television. And yeah, we're really excited about it. We launched on July 11th, which was the most recent season of The Bachelorette. And we're really excited to have a campaign that is bringing the conversation of body diversity into an area that most people don't want to talk about it, but it's very
Yes.
important.
Yes. And I had heard you on another podcast and I loved you were talking about the language. So,
Mm-hmm.
guys, we are going to focus on that a little bit today. The language around fat, someone being fat,
Mm-hmm.
and why there is this fat phobia, the
Mm-hmm.
stigma, and what we can do to change that.
Yeah.
So, we're going to really dive into that. But first of all, I want to make sure everyone listening knows this episode is also on YouTube, and we would love for you to come and be part of the conversation. You
Mm-hmm.
can comment on the YouTube video and let us know what is this like in your culture, in your
Yes.
country? Do you have the similar, fat phobia or these similar stigmas behind the word fat? What do you think of when someone says, is this word used in a negative way as a more moral judgment, moral
Mm-hmm.
judgment?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, morale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. So I'm excited to dive into that with you today, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, we planned this campaign very thoughtfully. We spent 4 months planning it. We have a graphic designer, we have people who work in media, we have people who do copywriting. And one of our biggest things that we had to really work on was talking about the language that we used. All your listeners know, like language is so important. How we use it, what do we mean by it? Um, and we definitely came across the concept of, do we use the word fat in our campaign? Because we do know that there is such a pushback to that word in our society. However, we really sat with what our beliefs are and what our goals are, and it's fat liberation. And we can't really fight for acceptance and to end oppression regarding how people are treated, fat people, without using the words and without being intentional about them. And we will get into it in a couple minutes, but fat is a neutral word. It should not be a moral negativity that is put upon somebody. And so if you believe that, then we can use this word in a positive or
Right.
neutral way.
Yes.
And so
That's
we
what I
just
want to talk about is
exactly.
how do we use that word in the United States? First of all,
Mm-hmm.
we know this is different in every culture and
Yes.
but I do think this is in some ways international. I have a feeling that our listeners will relate to this in their own culture. I
Mm-hmm.
know what it's like in the United States and a few of the countries that I've visited, but let's talk about, like, first of all, just why is there this negative stigma? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that you shared why you chose to use the word fat. Guys, Jenna's
Mm-hmm.
going to share 3 tips of how you can get involved, how you can help eliminate that stigma. And first, let's dive into why. Why should we eliminate this stigma?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Mm-hmm.
should we change the way we talk about and the way we think about the word fat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as simple as it's hard to undo centuries and centuries of negative connotation. But it is as simple as the word fat is not a negative thing. And it used to not be used that way. As early as like the 14th and 17th century, during like the Renaissance time, fat was a positive thing. It was a sign of wealth and prosperity. We were seeing art depicting women and men in fatter bodies as a good thing.
Yes,
And then
Rubens,
you
right? One
add,
of my
yeah,
favorite artists,
exactly.
and very healthy, fat people, beautiful paintings.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And then when you add in the slave trade and the way that we use anti-Blackness, and you add in the way that we started to characterize fatness as a negative thing, is
Mm.
literally born from anti-Blackness. We have a lot of resources on our page about that, and you can research it and do some reading on a book we recommend is Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. Sorry. And yeah, so there's a long history of anti-Blackness that gets correlated into the way we use the word negatively. And we maybe currently right now in 2022 don't think that is the case when we generally walk around upholding fatphobic ideals and moral judgment on people who are fat, but that is where it comes from. We started shifting once like the beginning of different centuries where they started making food more available and stable and easy to get it. Fatness became like not a sign of prosperity and started to be used in a way to demoralize people. And that goes hand in hand with racism and the slave trade.
I think
And
this is so vital and fascinating to consider the history, to think
yes.
about how this developed over time,
Mm-hmm.
where it came from.
Yeah.
That I think that's so important because that's going to help us realize, like, oh, these are not traditions that we want to uphold. This is
No.
something that should be changed.
Yes. And people really want to rely on the concept of like health regarding fat people. I mean, if you look up definitions of the like words, fat is just a descriptor word, meaning something that is bigger, that is heavier. That's fine.
Yes.
But
Yep.
then when you look up description words for obese and things like that, it's like you start getting into these negative
Moral judgments.
connotations, you know, and it's
Hmm.
very sad. It's overweight is a weight considered normal, over a weight that's considered normal or desirable. Why is there a definition where in which we're saying desirable, you know, obese, grossly fat and overweight? It's we get into these moral things and people bring in health because they believe that health is an indicator or weight is an indicator of health. It's not true. It's been proven over and over again that there are so many more factors that go into play that the BMI is used a lot against fat people, but there's also history with that as well. The BMI was created by thin white men and has a lot of deep history in anti-Blackness as well as it's just junk science that was originally created in a way. Sorry, it was created for other reasons again from those thin white man,
Mm.
but it was quickly transformed into being used as a way to deny people health insurance in its
Oh.
original form. And people don't kind of realize that as well. It's supposed to have an indication of people who are on the extremes, extremely
Yes.
underweight, extremely overweight, and how that does affect our health. And we're not saying that there aren't elements where that does affect people's health, but in order to deny people medical insurance, they started using it as a structure. And then that's where it like started. And now is where it is today, where people just be like, oh, well, I'm over the recommended BMI. What does that mean?
Right. Okay. I'm definitely going to have to do a lot of research, and I think our listeners are as well,
Yes.
because you're telling me things that I feel like I should know that I don't know a lot about, like
Yeah,
BMI.
they
This
don't
stands
tell us
for,
that stuff.
right, body mass index, and
Yeah.
I didn't know where that came from or how long it's been around. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive. Everybody listening, you do it as well. And let's
Yes.
dive into these 3 tips, Jenna. Give us 3 things that our listeners and myself can do to get involved and help to be a part of the solution.
Yes. If you're really interested in trying to deconstruct the way that we use the word fat and other and negative terms throughout our like society, a lot of it just stems with working on it on yourself. You know, unpacking why you think fat is a bad thing. And you might not, right? Like I think you'll find that you don't really think that, but there are so many inputs coming at us throughout society that uphold that. So one of the best ways to do that is to start getting different inputs in your system and in your life. So we recommend following fat creators and writers and journalists and people who are doing this conversation, liberationists. I know for myself, about 5 years ago, when I actively decided to start unfollowing people that upheld diet culture and
Mm.
people who were instead following people who were just existing and having a great time living their lives, it did wonders for my personal journey of how I accept my body and love myself.
Okay, I
So
love
we
this. So
really
can you
recommend.
give us some
Yeah.
recommendations, a couple of fat
Hmm.
creators that you would recommend who have this positive outlook?
Yes. One of my favorite ones right now is why is it not showing? Of course. You know how people's Instagrams are always yeah, I'm so embarrassed, y'all. Sorry. We have Fierce Fat Femme,
Okay.
a beautiful one. Please follow him. And then we have Fat Fab Feminist. So similar, you can get
Nice.
the idea of what these creators are doing. But I definitely recommend just start following a couple of plus size content creators, and then you can easily skip a little like arrow, and it'll show you more creators of the similar style,
Nice.
and you can just start doing that and diversifying your feed.
Awesome. I love that idea. I am going to take notes and
Mm-hmm.
follow them. And I want my daughters to follow them because this is so
Mm-hmm.
important to me that my daughters help be part of the solution as well and have
Yes.
a positive mindset about them and their bodies. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so give us the second tip.
And this one is more of also a thing you can be doing in your interpersonal life. When you hear people using the word fat in a negative way, call them out, call them in gently. Why are you speaking that way? Why are you putting a moral judgment on food? The way your body looks, the way somebody else's body looks. It is a way that we do a lot of unpacking of our systematic, oppression in our world, racism, homophobia, transphobia. So if you are already on a journey where you're doing a lot of that work and calling out people when you hear somebody be transphobic, think of fat phobia as the same thing. Oh my God, I'm just so, I can't believe I looked so fat in that photo, and they're saying it in a negative way. Stop
Mm,
them.
mm.
Why are we saying this in a negative term? Fat is not a bad thing.
I love that. I love that tip so much. And I love to think about, the efforts you're making in other areas too
Mm-hmm.
to remove any kind of phobia or
Mm-hmm.
racism
Mm-hmm.
and apply it here as well. Recognize
Mm-hmm.
that this is also a place that either to yourself, if you find yourself making a statement, or to someone else to also call them out and help
Mm-hmm.
us all be more aware of the way
Yes.
we're talking about this.
Yeah.
I
It
love that.
is it is a pretty widely accepted form of like
Yes. Self
bullying.
criticism,
Yeah,
bullying.
and yeah.
Yes. Oh,
We
that's a
we
good point.
really don't call that out as much. And that's I'm not trying to make any judgment as far as like what is more important in our society to be unpacking
Mm,
by any means. However, like I mentioned, a lot of it's all coincided. Anti-blackness is hand in
yes.
hand with anti-fatness. So we can't work on one without working on many other ones. And so, yeah, just try
Yes.
to welcome that into your work as well.
Definitely. Okay, give us your third tip. I'm excited about this one. I got a little sneak peek earlier and I'm very
This
much on
one
board.
might, yeah, this one might be hard for people, but listen to Lizzo.
I love Lizzo. Yes. Yes, Lizzo.
Yeah, listen and hear what she is saying. I remember not too long ago, people were so mad at her for playing that flute that was owned by a white person.
Mm,
All that stuff. But it's like, well, she's on stage dancing, singing, and playing a flute. She's an athlete.
yes, right?
She's an athlete. And I know many people of many different sizes who could not do what she does. And so we just, listen to Lizzo, take
I
in her
agree
gospel.
so much. I tried to karaoke a song that was Doja Cat, but it was rapping, and I could not do like two lines. I was like
Yeah.
gasping for breath. There's so much athleticism to be able to rap and sing and dance
Yeah.
on a stage when there are nerves involved too. It's true. And her message is so positive and uplifting and body positive. I
Yeah.
agree very much. I suggest everyone take this third tip as well. Go listen to some Lizzo. I love it.
And just have
Thank
fun and dance, and
Yes,
it's going to
and
be great.
dance. I know. Thank you so much for joining
Mhm.
us, Jenna, and for sharing these amazing three tips and some details about this campaign. Can you let our listeners know where can they go if they want more information?
Yes, please check us out on Instagram at Roses for Everybody. We have a link tree, and you'll see our petition as well as other interviews that we've been in. Our page as well is full of infographics that we've worked really hard on to unpack fat phobia, anti-fat bias, and the ways in which we can be better allies to each other. So please check us out. And if you have any questions or you want to start a dialogue, our DMs are open.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye bye.